clip that I showed on one of my shows that Harry Belafonte was there when he, you know.
When he said that.
Well, what he said that when they were celebrating, you know, getting the law passed and everything, that he made a big mistake.
Yeah, he said that.
But people, they didn't put that out there in the public.
Yeah, but now it's out there somewhat.
Yeah.
And he said, with this integrationist movement, I may be leading my people into a burning house.
Yes.
And now we know we're in a burning house. The question is, do you want to stay in the burning house and get burnt up? Or when do we begin our exodus? And what would an exodus look like?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the question that we all are facing right now, because we're at the crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, we're being genocided, and we need to address that issue.
Well, I think people are confused. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand, you know, when you talk about the soul, because nobody really taught them about the soul, what is the soul, because I had a lot of discussion on my show. I do a lot of things on the soul, and I showed them different books. And a lot of people, they just focus on the physical aspect of them and accomplishing what they call success, which is all physical stuff.
Yeah, but you see, we live on two axes. And I throw a book up here explaining decoding the vertical axis, alchemy of 9 dimensions. We live on especially 2 major axes, the horizontal axis, which is the spirit of the times and everything that people get caught up in, fame, fortune, houses, money, clothing, and being famous, etc. But the most important axis is a vertical axis. And the vertical axis is the spirit of the depths and the spirit of the deep. Toni Morrison speaks often in her works about the themes of the spirits of the deep, and they are the timeless dimensions, what we call archetypes,
Yes.
and orishas. Sigmund Freud came close to it by calling them complexes, but these are super intelligent, transcultural, transpersonal, transtemporal, or cut across all times, all people, all cultures. These are themes of human development that are inherited from one generation to a generation, going back to the beginning of evolution. And the ascension is all about the fact that we're moving to another stage of development. And we must be in touch with those spirits of the depths to understand our development. Carl Jung's Red Book, are you familiar with the Red Book?
Yeah.
The book was hidden for about almost 100 years because Western scientists thought he was crazy.
Oh, yes.
But he was in touch with the spirits of the deep. He came across the shadow and the great mother. He called the black goddess the shadow, but you never saw a white shadow. The shadow is black. And he called it, there's a positive shadow, there's a negative shadow, which we said she's all things. She's both the negative and the positive. But that's the deepest archetype, and the vertical axis is the shadow, the darkness, from which all things arise and to which all things will return. So as people are waking up, many of the times children, many of these manifestations of the soul will look like mental illness.
Yes.
There's a border line, and if they're not treated and handled correctly and guided, many of them will end up in mental hospitals and be put on medication. And it's about discernment. People who are waking up spiritually need to know how to treat or work with their awakening, but people in charge of them, the parents, because many parents, I've had parents who came to me in the clinic and I said, well, your child is not schizophrenic, your child is developing spiritually. And they would go and report me to the white supervisor. The doctor's talking about voodoo.
Ooh.
So our parents have gotten, anytime a younger generation is lost, it's the parents above them that's lost.
Thank you.
And they are the ones who went astray because they lost their culture, so they couldn't pass it on to any children. And they couldn't keep the children straight. But when the children are waking up spiritually, they will see spirits of their ancestors. They will hear voices from grandparents who are deceased. And all those things, you know, the typical psychiatrist would say, you're hallucinating. But I know my grandmother always could tell, and she never saw us as a doctor in her life that I know of, but she could tell everybody when they were going to be pregnant or they were pregnant, and she could always tell who was going to die, and their dreams that we need to be in touch with, and because they still are a part of our culture. And she would always, when she dreamt of crossing dirty water, she said, oh, I crossed dirty water last night, or I washed my clothes in dirty water last night, and we know that meant get ready for death. Yes. And just about every culture, every black culture from the islands and Brazil, Cuba, people I've talked to have those same dreams. So that's what we call archetypal dreams. They cut across cultures, cut across people, and cut across all time. So they are the themes of the vertical axis of reality that we need to know about, be in touch with, and use to help our children. So we're in a crisis in the crossroads, and also with that in mind, we have also at this time many of the children coming are children who are very spiritual, and they are what we call the children, the indigos, the crystals, and starseed children, and parents need to know about them. And teachers need to know about them. Educators, psychiatrists, all need to know about them, because otherwise they're being mislabeled. And I notice that white people are building schools to help them.
Oh, okay.
But black people don't even seem to know about them.
But they don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
And definitely don't have any special schools for those who are not special children or gifted children. So we need to decide what can we do to get out of the burning house.
Thank you. Well, that's why we're here today, and I love your book.
Thank you.
And I see you have mine in your hand. And I see you have wanted to make some comment. We have about 4 minutes left on this taping. So do you want to speak on that? I'll save it for the part 2.
Well, we can talk a bit about it, because there are several points in your book that I noticed that one thing is that a lot of your your development came from within, from above. So I tell a lot of people, you don't really need necessarily to have an outer initiation by any group. That you'll be initiated from your guides, from your inner guides, from your ancestors, and so forth. So a lot of that, I noticed in your book by reading it, that you were initiated from within and from above. And that's one of the things about spiritual culture, is that everybody is born with a guardian angel and with 2 or 3 protecting spirits from your ancestral line. The protecting spirits could not don't always have to be from your ancestral line, but your guardian is usually from your ancestral line.
Okay.
And they will initiate you. They watch over you, and they will direct you through your dreams, through your intuitions, through your synchronicities. When you want to have something happen and you don't know how it's going to happen, it's just there. And you know, it's not something you can plan. It's something that's planned for you from above and from your inner spiritual guides. So that was one thing. And the other thing is that many times when the children are awakening, because I've had many of the young people, I've had several, not many, but some young people who are teenagers who are awakening, and because they're getting this deep spiritual knowledge, they say, well, I'm an ascended master. But I tell them that you must, when you're getting information from within, from the soul, the spirit, you must ask 3 times, is it true? Is this the truth? Is this the truth? And any spiritual entity that's trying to deceive you has to tell you whether it's true or not. Because there are many forces from the unconscious mind, the soul, that will misguide and mislead you. And we need to know how to discern the good from the bad. So that was something that I wanted you to expand on, your discernment.
Okay, well, we at the end of part one. I'm glad you made that comment about the initiation, because there was a lot of people I met, you know, oh, you need to be initiated. Mm-hmm. And so I'm already. Mm-hmm. It's from within, and I knew it. Yeah. So, yeah. And they wanted to charge me
thousands of dollars
to initiate me.
At the same time, they initiate you into the wrong things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, you ended asking me something concerning my book.
Yeah, my question was, reading your book, I noticed that you went through many passages of transformation and ascension and development to develop your high spiritual gifts. And I wanted to know, you mentioned a couple of places, discernment. And discernment is something that we need to be aware of when we're working with the youth. Not only for parents, but for teachers, for psychiatrists especially. Mm-hmm. So what are some of your insights about discernment and helping to guide these youngsters as they're awakening spiritually?
Well, the whole thing for me was going within mm-hmm. and learning how to trust that spirit, we call intuition, God consciousness, because it's a lot, you hear a lot of voices. Mm-hmm. And this is, I spoke to someone about this before, because they keep saying that they hear God talking to them. And I usually ask people, how do you know when it's the Creator talking to you? Mm-hmm. But they say they don't. They just assume mm-hmm. because it sounds good and it sounds right. Mm-hmm. And there was things that came to me, if I would have followed it through, I probably would have been hurt, killed. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you spoke in your book about the heart. In fact, mm-hmm. and I think the heart is the soul.
It is, yeah.
And
it's the center.
It lets you know. You feel it. Mm-hmm. You know, when I meet certain people, I feel if this person is in a good vibration, or I shouldn't be around them, I shouldn't interact with them. Mm-hmm. So it's about learning self and trusting self and just following that intuition. And a lot of times, you don't know where it's going to lead you. And I think that's where the trust comes in. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people over the years, you know, well, you need to go here, you need to do this, you need to be initiated by whoever. And my inner spirit say, no, mm-hmm. you're already being initiated mm-hmm. from within and from above. And I always felt that way. I just, you know, because I feel I came in the 50s as an indigo soul too. Mm-hmm. And I always felt I didn't fit in here mm-hmm. from a young child. Yeah. I just knew. So when I manifested dis-ease, that was, I call it my wake-up call, but I think that was what I needed to remind me, who am I and why am I here? Mm-hmm. So that was how the book came about, how the show came about. I started doing workshops in my apartment. Then I, over the years, wound up in Manhattan doing workshops for about 7 years, once a month. Mm-hmm. And Spirit hasn't led me wrong yet.
Great.
But
great.
If I
on other types of children coming into the world at this time, yes. What I call crystals and indigos, who are very, very intelligent children, or now they're even young adults because they started coming some time ago. Mm-hmm. But until we develop the institutions to help them develop,